He thought an invite to his $1 million wedding would finally break her spirit. He sent it to her parking lot address, the 2005 Corolla she had been sleeping in for 6 months, moving every few hours through Orlando parking lots to stay ahead of the police. He imagined her showing up in the best dress she could scrape together, sitting near the back, watching him begin the life he had chosen over her. What he did not imagine, what he could not have imagined, was the gate opening and a car pulling through that nobody in that driveway had ever seen before. Not because it was flashy, because it was the kind of rare that does not need to announce itself. And then the door opened, and the woman who stepped out, in a deep teal, Zapotec-embroidered Carla Fernandez gown, and moving the way people move when they have stopped trying to prove anything to anyone, was not the broken woman he had been expecting. She was the woman who now owned his future. He didn't know he had invited his boss's new business partner to his own wedding. He didn't know the man stepping out behind her held 64% of the company keeping his visa alive. He found out 12 feet away from his new bride, at the reception table he could not stop staring at. Welcome to today's cinematic narrative. We are diving into a story of absolute sacrifice, a cold-blooded betrayal in the heart of Florida, and a karma-driven comeback that proves character always outlasts status. If you love seeing the underdog take it all, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more daily human dramas, and then let us know in the comments. Where in the world are you watching from? There is a kind of silence in the Sierra Mazateca that people from the lowlands never understand. It is not the silence of absence. It is the silence of waiting, of mountains that have watched too many people leave and too few return. The locals call Huautla de Jimenez many things. The government calls it a municipality. The people born there and never left call it home. And the people who left it call it, in the quiet hours before sleep, the last real place they ever knew. Amalia Delgado Reyes had not slept more than 5 hours at a stretch in 11 months. She was 31 years old, small-framed, and with hands that had begun to crack at the knuckles from washing other people's clothes and preparing other people's food and bathing bodies that were not hers to touch, but that needed touching all the same. She worked without papers, without a formal caregiver certification, without a contract, without any document that the Mexican government would recognize as labor. But the elderly woman whose house she cleaned 3 mornings a week recognized it, and the man with emphysema, whose oxygen machine she monitored every Tuesday and Thursday night, recognized it. And the 3 families on Calle Cempasúchil, who paid her 200 pesos each to spend 2-hour blocks attending their bedridden grandparents, they recognized it too. She was earning the equivalent of $220 a month. She sent 200 of it north. Her father, Philemon, sat every morning at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee he was not drinking, watching the steam curl up and disappear. He had lung disease, not the dramatic Hollywood kind, the slow, grinding Oaxacan highlands kind, the kind that comes from a lifetime of cooking fires in underventilated rooms and 3 years working in a cement quarry before the quarry closed. His medication cost 840 pesos a month. The medication Amalia stopped buying for him 4 months ago because the money had to go north. She didn't tell him she stopped buying it. She told him the pharmacy was out of stock. He nodded slowly because he was 71 years old and had lived long enough to know when the people he loves are lying to protect him, and he had decided that being protected is its own kind of love. But and what did Amalia hear from the north? She heard Severo's voice through a phone speaker, confident, asking for more money. 3,000 pesos. for the IT bootcamp with the CompTIA plus the Google Cloud certification included. This is the one, he said. This opens the door. Send it by Thursday. 3,000 pesos was her entire month's worth of earnings. She sent it Thursday morning. Her father ran out of bronchodilator on Saturday. He didn't say anything about it until the following Wednesday, when his breathing was bad enough that her mother called Amalia away from a patient's house at 11 at night. Amalia got there and found her father sitting upright in bed, head slightly forward, concentrating on each breath the way you concentrate on threading a needle in bad light. She sat next to him and put her hand on his back and did not say anything, because what was there to say? She had traded his breath for Severo's textbook. She knew it. He probably knew it. They sat in the dark together, and he breathed, and she kept her hand on his back, as if her palm alone could hold the air inside him. By morning, he was better. By morning, she had promised herself this would be the last time. It was not the last time. Months later, Severo called from Florida. He had the certifications. He had a job interview, a real one, with a real tech company in Naples. He sounded like a man who had just been handed something he always believed was coming to him. This is it, he said. This is the thing. When I get this job, everything changes. You come up here, we get a real apartment, we start over. Everything we have been doing, and all the sacrifice, it was for this. She told him not to forget to iron his collar. The collar always matters. He laughed. She smiled at the phone. Outside, the Sierra Madre held its breath in the cloud. Severo got the job. His title was IT Infrastructure Coordinator at a mid-sized logistics firm in Naples, Florida, a company whose subsidiary network touched a significant portion of the cold chain shipping infrastructure between Florida and the Gulf of Mexico. The salary was $72,000 a year. His H-1B visa was sponsored by the company. His apartment, a one-bedroom with a pool he never used, cost $1,900 a month. He did not send for Amalia. Not right away, he told her. Not yet. The apartment is too small. Not yet. I am getting settled. The not yets began to sound less like a delay and more like a language. And a language Amalia was learning the way you learn that you have been lied to. First with confusion, then with a specific and nauseating clarity. She found out about the other woman the same way most women do, through a corner of a photograph she was not supposed to see, posted briefly to a social media story, and then deleted, but not deleted before Amalia had already seen it, already registered the background of a restaurant, already noted the particular way his hand rested on someone who was clearly not a colleague. She called him. He picked up on the fifth ring. She said, "Tell me who she is." There was a long pause. Not the pause of a man gathering courage. The pause of a man calculating. "Her name is Brittany," he said. "We have been together a few months. What we were, it was built on a version of our lives that doesn't exist anymore. I'm different here. I'm someone else here. Someone else." In the apartment she paid for, on the visa she supported him to earn. Living the life she starved her father's lungs to help him build. His lawyer would be in touch, he said. There would be divorce papers. He wanted it to be clean. Because Amalia had worked under the table to maximize every peso going north. No formal employment records, no tax history, no joint account, no shared address on any document. Florida law gave her nothing. The apartment was his. The salary was his. The certifications on his wall were his. Everything she had sacrificed to build was, in the eyes of American law, entirely his. She used what remained of her savings to fly to Orlando. She had $430 and the address of a cousin who had promised her a couch for 2 weeks, and maximum. The cousin of a cousin lost her apartment to an eviction while Amalia was in the air. The 2005 Toyota Corolla was gold, not the intentional gold of wealth, but the oxidized gold of a car that had started white and spent too many decades under Florida's sun. It had 210,000 miles on it. The rear left window did not close all the way. Amalia bought it for $800 from a man in Kissimmee who sold cars from his front yard and did not ask where she planned to sleep. She slept in it for 6 months. The people who lived this way called it the musical cars, not from bitterness, but from a kind of functional dark humor. You moved every few hours because most Orlando area parking lots had signs about loitering and overnight parking, and the police, when they came, were not cruel, but they were consistent. She learned the rhythms. The Walmart on West Colonial closed its overnight tolerance around 3 in the morning. The hospital parking structure on Princeton Street allowed 4 hours before the attendant called the floor. The Catholic Church on Orange Blossom Trail was her best option on weekends. The heat was something else entirely. Not the bright tropical kind from the tourism brochures. The heat that pooled inside a car with black vinyl seats at 2 in the morning, thick enough to feel like something you were wearing. The humidity that crept through the imperfect window seal and made everything she owned feel slightly damp, including her resume, which she printed at the library on Thursdays and which developed a soft curl at the edges that she tried to press flat between her palms before every interview. She applied for 31 positions in 6 months. She was offered 4. She accepted 2. Neither lasted more than 3 weeks. She did not cry much. She had cried all she had in the first 2 weeks, and what was left after that was not grief exactly. It was a kind of focused endurance, the same way her father concentrated on breathing in the dark, not thinking about tomorrow, just managing the next breath. She kept a notebook. Every morning she wrote what she needed to do, who she was, what she was building toward, even when what she was building toward was invisible. One entry, from March, read, "I am not defined by what he took. I am defined by what I choose to do next. I choose to do the next right thing." The listing was on a caregiver job board she checked every morning at the library, seeking full-time live-in care for an elderly woman with cognitive decline. Private estate, Windermere, must be patient, bilingual preferred, compensation negotiable for the right candidate. She had applied to 8 similar listings. 7 had not responded. 1 had asked about her immigration status and disconnected. This one called back in 4 hours. The woman who needed care was named Felicitas Ibarra de Velasco. She was 78 years old, with an Alzheimer's diagnosis 18 months prior. Her decline was not fast, the slow patchwork kind, where some mornings she was entirely herself, and other mornings she was somewhere else entirely, in a time that no one else in the room could reach. 2 previous aides had quit within their first month. One described her as combative. The other filed a formal complaint. With 6 days into Amalia's hire, she was reviewing a medication log in the hallway when she heard it. A low, frustrated sound from the kitchen. She set the log down and went in. Felicitas was standing at the counter in her housecoat and 1 slipper. The other had been removed and abandoned near the refrigerator. She was gripping a jar of strawberry preserves with both hands, twisting the lid with the concentration of someone defusing something. Her face had gone past frustrated into a territory harder to name. The particular terror of someone whose hands used to know how to do things and now couldn't, and who was aware of the gap in a way that made the gap worse. She said, "It won't, this thing won't, I always could." She made a sound that was not quite a word, and then she sat down on the kitchen floor. Not gently, not with intention, she simply ran out of the will to remain standing. The jar was in her lap. She pressed it against her chest. The clinical response, the protocol on the laminated sheet on the refrigerator, written by a consultant who had never met Felicitas, was to take the jar, open it efficiently, redirect her to the table, manage the situation. Amalia sat down on the floor, not across from her, beside her, close enough that their arms almost touched. She looked at the jar and said, "Those lids are designed by people who have never tried to open them, while also trying to live their life." Felicitas looked at her. A small, startled recognition entered her face. She said, "I used to put a spoon under the edge. That's how you do it. That's how my mother showed me." Amalia said, "Show me." "I don't know the spoon trick. My mother always ran it under hot water, and I always thought that was too slow. Show me your way." Something shifted in Felicitas's face. She reached for the spoon on the counter and worked the handle under the lid's edge and popped the seal with a sound that was enormously satisfying, the small bright crack of something giving way. She opened the jar. Amalia dipped 2 fingers in and tasted the jam. "That is a good one," she said. "A real strawberry. Not the ones that taste like a memory of strawberry. Real." They sat on the kitchen floor and ate strawberry preserves out of the jar with their fingers in the morning light. Then Amalia took a small brown glass bottle from her cardigan pocket and uncorked it and held it loosely nearby, without saying anything about it. Felicitas said, "What is that?" "Jasmine," Amalia said. "From a plant I keep in the car." Felicitas went very quiet. Then very quietly she said, "My mother had jasmine on the windowsill." "Mine too," Amalia said. They sat there for a while. The panic was gone from Felicitas's face, not replaced by joy. That would be too neat. Just replaced by presence. She was here, in this kitchen, on this floor, with this smell, in this morning. She was not somewhere else. Standing in the hallway, watching through the kitchen archway, was Heliodoro Velasco. He was 44 years old and had come in through the rear entrance as he always did. He had intended to get coffee. He stood very still instead. He watched his mother, who in the past 18 months had been reduced by this disease to someone he sometimes didn't recognize, who cried without knowing why, who called him by his dead uncle's name. Who once barricaded herself in the bathroom because she couldn't remember how locks worked. He watched her laugh. A small sound. Barely a laugh, but a real one. He went back outside and sat on the dock and watched the lake for 20 minutes. Then he called his assistant and said, "The new caregiver. What do we know about her?" The invitation arrived as a text message, not a formal invitation. Those had gone to the 228 people who mattered, printed on cream-colored cardstock with gold foil lettering, announcing the union of Severo Cabrera and Brittany Kowalski at a Palm Beach venue in January. What Amalia received was a text at 11:14 on a Thursday night. He said, "Figured you should know. Getting married January 18th. Palm Beach, high society venue. Thought maybe you'd want to come. You see what you missed. No hard feelings. It's a big event. Just thought you should know." He sent a physical envelope too, mailed to her parents' address in Oaxaca, arriving 3 weeks late. He had ordered 230 invitations. He sent her one. He sent it because he wanted to see what she would do. He had built, in his mind, a vision of Amalia arriving at his wedding in the best dress she could afford, sitting near the back, watching him begin the life he had chosen over her. He needed someone present who had known him before, someone who could confirm, by their own diminishment, that he had ascended. He did not know that Amalia had been promoted 3 times in 4 months. He did not know that Heliodoro Velasco, whose name appeared on the organizational chart of Severo's employer in the box labeled Majority Stakeholder and Principal Executive Partner, had come to think of Amalia Delgado as one of the most perceptive and operationally capable people he had encountered in a career that had crossed 3 continents and 4 acquisitions. He did not know that in November, after a conversation on the dock about the caregiver shortage in Florida's Medicaid market, Amalia had drafted a 14-point business model on the back of a grocery receipt, later properly typed, for a dignified in-home elder care agency, one that paid above market, one that hired from underserved communities, one that put patient relationship continuity above clinical efficiency. He did not know that Heliodoro had read all 14 points, called his investment attorney, and come back to Amalia with a single question. What do you need to start? She showed Heliodoro the text on her phone one morning on the dock, not because she needed his permission, because he had become something close to a colleague and something close to a friend, and she did not want to carry the absurdity of it alone. He read it quietly. Then he said, I need to tell you something. The name on your invitation, Velasco Marine Holdings, that is 64% mine. His H-1B compliance review is currently scheduled for February. Given some documentation irregularities in his department, that review may require some additional attention. And then separately, as your employer and your business partner, I would like to attend a wedding in Palm Beach in January as your guest. She thought about it for a long time. She said, he sent this to break me. He wanted me to come and be broken. Heliodoro said, going feels like showing up. What you make of showing up, that's yours. She thought about it more. The morning light on the lake was flat and clear. A heron stood at the edge of the water doing nothing, with the patience of something that had never once doubted its right to be where it is. Then she said, I will need a dress. The venue was a Spanish colonial estate on South Ocean Boulevard in Palm Beach. Marble approach. Bougainvillea climbing the colonnades in a gradient from orange to crimson. And a view from the South Terrace that showed you the Atlantic the way a museum shows you a painting, framed at a respectful distance, definitively. 228 guests, a string quartet in the courtyard, an ice sculpture of 2 interlocked rings, which had been delivered that morning and was by afternoon slightly softer at the edges. Severo stood at the entrance in his charcoal suit, greeting guests with the relaxed authority of a man performing confidence. He had spent 3 months imagining this day, and it was proceeding exactly as imagined, which was either the sign of great planning or the sign that nothing genuinely unexpected had entered his field of vision yet. He had not yet looked toward the gate. The car that pulled through at 4:23 in the afternoon was a Solana Deportivo Series 2, a Mexican luxury marque, family-owned, produced in limited runs out of Guadalajara. The kind of car whose exclusivity operated by total absence of mass-market visibility, black exterior, interior in cognac leather, not a car you recognized by logo, a car you recognized because it was unlike anything else in the driveway. Amalia stepped out. The dress was Carla Fernandez, a Mexican designer working in traditional textiles and sustainable production. Deep teal fabric with geometric Zapotec embroidery at the neckline and cuffs from a community cooperative 2 hours from Huautla. It moved the way expensive fabric moves, without effort. It looked like someone who knew who she was. Heliodoro stepped out behind her. Dark suit, no tie, and the particular ease of a man for whom important events stopped being important long ago. They walked toward the entrance. Severo was mid-handshake with a colleague when he saw her. He completed the handshake. He turned. He looked at Amalia. He looked at the man beside her. He looked at the car. He looked back at Amalia. In that moment, in the space of that look, you could see the calculation happening in real time. The variables, how she looked, who she was with, what the car suggested, what that suggested, and whether he had made a catastrophic error. He had. Inside the reception hall, the seating coordinator found that Miss Delgado had been flagged as a VIP host-level guest by the venue's principal stakeholder, whose company held a service contract with the estate management group. She was placed accordingly, at the table from which the entire room was visible. Severo's table was 12 feet away. During the reception, through the natural social mechanics of the room, a mutual colleague from the firm spotted Heliodoro, made a comment about work, and Severo was drawn into the conversation. At the exact moment, Heliodoro said, very calmly, "We have been doing a deep review of H-1B compliance across several departments, specifically looking at documentation gaps in the IT infrastructure team. The audit will be complete by end of January. We will know more after that." When the colleague introduced himself to Amalia, Heliodoro said, "This is Amalia Delgado, my business partner. She is the founder of Felicitas Home Health. We are in pre-launch right now." Amalia looked at Severo exactly once, not with triumph, not with contempt, with the specific neutrality of someone who has decided that a person is no longer large enough in their life to require an expression. He looked away first. During the first dance, when Severo was supposed to be watching Brittany and was instead watching Amalia talk to people at the VIP table with the easy animation of someone who belongs somewhere, not performing belonging, not working for it, just inhabiting it, he understood. Whatever he had meant to accomplish by sending that text, by mailing that envelope, by inviting her here to witness what he had become, whatever wound he had meant to open in her, was not a wound at all. He was the wound. He had been the wound all along. Brittany said something to him. He smiled. He held her hand. He danced. And across the room, Amalia accepted a glass of sparkling water from a passing server, laughed at something a colleague said, and did not look in his direction again for the rest of the evening. The office of Felicitas Home Health Agency occupied 3 rooms on the second floor of a Wilshire Boulevard building in Beverly Hills, with a view of the Hollywood Hills if you stood at the right window and turned your head slightly left. The walls held 2 things: a framed photograph of Felicitas Ibarra on a good day, holding a jasmine plant and grinning at something off-camera, and a whiteboard covered in operational metrics that Amalia updated every Monday morning. The agency had 43 employees. 12 of them had been living in their vehicles, in parking lots in Orlando, Kissimmee, Hialeah, Homestead, when Amalia found them. Not by luck, and by deliberate design. She had partnered with social service organizations, a church network in Osceola County, and a mutual aid group in Miami-Dade to establish a referral pipeline specifically for women who were housing insecure and had caregiver skills that the formal market refused to recognize. She paid for their certifications. She provided housing transition support during their first 60 days. She paid from day 1 of their employment 15%. above the Medicaid rate standard. The agency had a wait list of clients. In its second quarter, it was invited to present its staffing model at a Florida Department of Elder Affairs contractor conference in Tallahassee. An invitation that surprised Amalia slightly, because she had not designed the model to be presentable. She had designed it to work. And what of Severo? The H-1B compliance audit concluded in February, as Heliodoro had indicated. The findings were real. Documentation irregularities in Severo's department, a pattern of late recertification filings, a benefits attestation submitted with an incorrect classification code that had been flagged 18 months prior and never properly corrected. The department was restructured. 3 positions were eliminated. Severo's role was absorbed into a consolidated function based in Houston, which required relocation or separation. He chose separation. He had confidence in his credentials. He had difficulty finding a position at equivalent compensation. He and Brittany moved to a smaller apartment. He accepted a remote position at $54,000 a year, $18,000 less than before, which was enough of a difference to matter in the specific ways that matter to a marriage built partly on the assumption of upward trajectory. Brittany was from Ohio. She had family in Ohio. She had, as the months passed, more reasons to visit Ohio and fewer reasons to come back. The divorce was filed in September. Without his employer's H-1B sponsorship, and without a new sponsor secured before his visa's grace period elapsed, Severo Cabrera found himself facing a departure timeline. He left Florida on a Thursday. The flight to Mexico City was on a commercial carrier. He had 2 large suitcases, his laptop, and his certifications, the CompTIA, the Google Cloud, the Cisco routing fundamentals. The certifications were real. They had cost something real, just not something that had been his to spend. He returned to the village he had once looked down on, in the way of a man who confused origin with ceiling. The village had not changed to accommodate his absence. The roads were the same. The church on the hill was the same. His mother was older. His cousin's kids were taller. The place where he used to sit on the roof and watch the mountains in the afternoon was exactly as he had left it. He sat there, the first evening back, and watched the mountains in the afternoon. Amalia came home in October, when the marigolds were being prepared for Dia de Muertos, when Huautla smelled of copal and cempasúchil and wood smoke, when the Sierra looked the way it always looked in early October, heavy and green and enormously patient. She came back because her father's breathing had gotten worse. She came back because she could now pay for the treatment he needed, not the rotating second-tier medication they had been managing on budget, but the proper pulmonologist, the proper regimen, the proper follow-up. She sat in the consulting room and translated between the doctor and her father and her mother, the way she had always translated between the world and her family, except that now she had something behind her translation other than hope. She also brought a contractor. The church on the hill, the one her grandmother had married in, the one she had once almost mentioned to Severo before she stopped, before she hung up, had been in slow structural decline for 11 years. She had hired an architect from Oaxaca City who specialized in traditional construction and a crew of local workers, and then she had funded the restoration out of the agency's community investment allocation, which she had written into the founding documents on the advice of her accountant and the insistence of her own conscience. She did not attend the groundbreaking ceremony. She stood at the edge of the site and watched the first measurement being taken, and then walked back down the hill to her parents' house. Her mother handed her coffee, café de olla with cinnamon and piloncillo, the kind that tastes specifically of home in a way that only the specific tastes of childhood can taste. Her father came in slowly with his oxygen supplement and sat down and looked at her and said, "The cage of gold, they call it. La jaula de oro. You go in, and it's everything you need, and you can't get out." "I'm out, Papa," she said. He said, "You are?" She said, "I'm here. I'm drinking your coffee in your kitchen. The cage is the one we build for ourselves. I don't live in mine anymore." He looked at her for a long time. Then he nodded. "Your grandmother would have liked that church when it's done," he said. "She would have had opinions about the tile choices," Amalia said. He smiled. She smiled. Outside, the Sierra Madre held everything in its old, cloud-wrapped patience. There is a thing that happens in villages like Huautla when someone from the village comes back changed. Not just prosperous, but changed in the way that comes from surviving something that should have broken you. The village notices. It doesn't announce the noticing. It doesn't make speeches. But there is a quality of attention. The way people greet you at the market, the way the woman who sells elotes nods when you pass, was the way the children look at you, the way children look at someone who has done something they cannot yet name, that constitutes its own form of recognition. Amalia Delgado walked through the market on her 5th day home. She bought tomatoes and hierba santa and a bag of chapulines she knew her father would eat 3 of before deciding they were too salty. She talked to the woman who had been her neighbor growing up. She stopped at the pharmacy where the bronchodilators she hadn't been able to buy were now in stock and paid for. She didn't think about Severo much, not because she had forgiven him or not forgiven him, but because he had simply become one of the past events of her life, like the cracked window in the Corolla, like the library parking lot on Princeton Street, and like the 11 months of 75-hour weeks in the Sierra Madre. Things that had happened, that she had survived, that had shaped her hands into the particular shape they now had, competent and cracked at the knuckles and capable of sitting down on a kitchen floor when someone needed it. Felicitas Ibarra, in the facility that Amalia had helped select and still visited quarterly, continued to have good days and harder days. On the good days, she sometimes remembered the jasmine, and it was always provided. The church on the hill was completed the following April. It was beautiful. The village held a small ceremony. Someone brought elotes. Several people had opinions about the tile choices. Amalia's grandmother would have been pleased. That was the story of Amalia's triumph and the cold hand of justice. What was the most satisfying part of Severo's downfall for you? Was it the moment he realized who he had actually invited? The moment his calculation of her diminishment collided with her actual trajectory? Or was it his final walk back, 2 suitcases and a folder of certifications, to the village he had looked down on? Let us know below. If this story moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of resilience and second chances. Thanks for being part of our community.